We all know that video game graphics have come a long way since the start of simple pixelated characters and environments. Today, one can't even find much difference between games and real life. Today's games are stunningly realistic, with intricate details and interactive worlds. But have you ever wondered how exactly video game graphics work? How do pixelated and barely distinguishable characters now look totally real? The evolution of video game graphics started with simple and blocky visuals, but fast forward to now, it has evolved into highly detailed depiction with photorealistic elements. Early games such as Pong and Space Invaders utilized basic 2D graphics. These games' images were drawn pixel by pixel. Developers then moved on to 2.5D and 3D graphics as technology evolved. This resulted in more complex and interactive experiences. In the early days of gaming, 2D graphics were actually the standard. They were made up of sprites that are two-dimensional images. They were also projected on the screen to represent characters, backgrounds, and objects. And even though they are simple and basic to the human eyes, they still manage to capture the imaginations of players and be the foundation for future developments. Then entered the transition to 3D graphics, which has marked a significant leap in the video game industry. 3D graphics use polygons, which are flat, to make three-dimensional environments and objects. Through combining multiple polygons, the developers can produce detailed models that can be viewed from any angle. This change opened for more realistic and interactive game worlds that consisted of characters and environments that are heavily detailed and could be explored in 3 dimensions. If you don't have an idea, rendering is the process of generating an image from a model through use of a computer program. In video games, rendering involves using 3D models, textures, lighting, and other elements and then converting them into 2D images that can be projected on the screen. This process is managed by the game's graphics engine, which specializes in managing and optimizing rendering tasks. Unlike a CPU, the Graphics Processing Unit, or GPU, is designed for general-purpose computing. It has a critical role in rendering the graphics of a video game. It is specifically optimized for performing complicated mathematical computations needed for rendering. Modern GPUs today can process about millions of polygons and create extremely detailed realistic images. There are also what we call shaders. These are programs that run on the GPU and can decide how pixels and vertices are processed. It has different types, which include vertex shaders, pixel shaders, and geometry shaders. Vertex shaders manage the transformation and lighting of vertices, while on the other hand, pixel shaders determine the texture and color of each pixel on the screen. And lastly, geometry shaders are the ones that can manipulate entire polygons, which helps in creating visual effects that are more complex. Images that are applied to the surface of 3D models are what we call textures. They can be basic colors and patterns or even complex images. They are wrapped around the model with the use of a process known as UV mapping. This process ensures that the image aligns perfectly with the surface of the model. In addition, materials determine properties like reflectivity, roughness on the surface, and transparency. Due to the fact that materials define how an object interacts with light and other elements inside a game, developers need to combine texture with materials to provide a more realistic surface that can react to lighting and environmental changes. Another crucial part of video game graphics is the lighting, because it affects the overall atmosphere of the game and how it looks. There are numerous lighting techniques or methods that can be used in games, with each one having their own advantages and disadvantages. The first kind of lighting is what we call ambient lighting. This style is a consistent light that affects equally all of the objects inside a scene. It mimics the effect of indirect light that is being spread in different directions, which provides a base level of illumination. There is also what we call directional lighting. Directional lighting replicates light from a faraway source, like the sun. It also casts parallel rays of light across the scene, which produce shadows and highlights that provide a sense of realism and depth to the elements present. Next is point lighting. This acts as a light source that emits light in all different directions from a single point, literally like a light bulb. This kind of lighting produces more localized shadows and illuminations. Last is spot lighting, which is similar to point lighting but is different in the sense that it focuses its beam like a literal flashlight. It also produces a cone of light that can be pointed at precise locations, which creates dramatic shadows and, of course, lighting effects. Shadows, on the other hand, are important for producing realistic and more immersive environments. Shadows offer visual clues about the location and shape of each object in the scene. There are various methods for generating shadows in video games, and developers often play around with volume of the shadows to give the setting a distinct feel. Video games nowadays use a set of advanced graphical effects to improve realism and visual appeal. These effects normally need accurate calculations and significant algorithms. Another component that contributes to the process of how video games work is anti-aliasing. It is a technique that is being utilized to smooth out jagged edges that emerge when diagonal edges and lines are rendered at low resolutions. Anti-aliasing has numerous types, such as FXAA, or Fast Approximate Anti-Aliasing, and Super Sample Anti-Aliasing, also known as SSAA. Ambient occlusion is another technique responsible for simulating the way light is blocked by objects in the scene. It creates soft shadows in corners and crevices. This effect also adds realism and depth to the environment. These are just some of the important components of how video game graphics actually work. There are still other parts that contribute to its process, such as motion blur, depth of field, particle systems, ray tracing, and even procedural generation, which is a technique that can be used to create content algorithmically or automatically instead of manually. Video game graphics consist of these tiny components that complement each other to make a product that can mimic the physics and look of the real world. The future of video games is undeniably exciting, especially for the people who love playing. Together with its advancements in hardware and software, it could pave the way for even more realistic and immersive game experiences. Technologies like ray tracing and AI-driven graphics are expected to revolutionize the way we interact with digital worlds. The arrival of these AI-driven graphics could play an important role in the video game industry. AI algorithms can be utilized for enhancing textures, generating realistic elements, and even producing an entire game environment. But we must always remember that, even though the capability of AI could make the process of creating video game graphics easier, we should still try to avoid full reliance on it. There is also what we call virtual reality. If you are a fan of, let's say, Sword Art Online, you know how this technology could make the video game experience more interactive. And as VR technology continues to innovate, games with higher resolutions, better tracking, and extremely realistic graphics will continue to emerge, and the link between reality and virtual will slowly blur. Video game graphics have transformed significantly over the past few years, from simple 2D sprites to complex and photorealistic 3D worlds. The strong connection between powerful hardware, sophisticated software, and innovative methods has helped the developers in producing stunning and interactive experiences within video games. As technology continues to advance, the future of video game graphics holds endless, unimaginable possibilities. What do you think about the evolution and components of video game graphics? Do you now understand how it works? Which video games have impressed you the most with its stunning and realistic visuals? Share it in the comments section, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.